Hello fellow cinephiles, Film Guru here. Today I'm reviewing Dr. Sleep. This was directed by Mike Flanagan and stars Ewan McGregor, Rebecca Ferguson and Kylan Curran. Following the events of The Shining, a now adult Dan Torrance meets a young girl with similar powers, Abra, played by Kyla Curran, as he tries to protect her from a cult known as the True Knot, who prey on children with powers to remain immortal. Dan is ultimately haunted by his past and ultimately comes to terms with things. Look, I liked this film. I thought it was solid. It's definitely one of the better films that come out this year. It's one of the better sequels based upon a film that came out many years ago in the 80s. And it's a good example of how to do a sequel after so many years in a really interesting and fun way. And I think this film really captures that. I think Mike Flanagan's one of those directors like Jordan Peele, Ari Aster and Robert Eggers. They're all trying to do something different. They're all working in the horror genre and breathing new life into it and sort of changing cinema in many ways. I think he's crafted a really fantastic film here. It looks really great. I like the story he's telling. I think this type of filmmaker he is, the stories he wants to tell, really suits the Stephen King sort of novels, because he ultimately builds characters and then the horror comes later and you're sort of really invested in the character before all the other stuff transpires. And that's what Stephen King does really well. And I think Mike's really suited to that sort of storytelling. What I like most about this film is he pays homage to the original film, The Shining, in many ways, especially with the music, and the start of the end of the film sort of take you back to that period and that particular film and the events after what transpired for Danny and his mother. I really like the way it's shot. It looks beautiful in sections. There's really creative ideas in it, such as Rebecca Ferguson character, Rose, how she's able to sort of meditate and go into this girl's mind. I really love that, and how the girl defends herself in her mind. I really love all of that aspect. It looks really fantastic and sort of has a really great dream quality to it that I really like, and those scenes are really fantastic. What Mike Flanagan does really well too, I think, here is rather than taking footage from The Shining and just doing it again, or digitizing actors to have the same faces as the particular actors who portrayed the characters in the original film, he recasts it. When we see the flashbacks of stuff, or at the beginning we sort of see where Danny and his mother are after the events of what happened to them in The Shining, they recast the roles and they pick actors who really suit them, who can give the performances that are similar. And I really liked that. It was a refreshing take on things rather than de-aging and all that sort of stuff they're using these days. It was sort of refreshing in that regard. What I like too is Dr. Sleep sort of expands on the idea of what The Shining is and other people who have it, and looking at sort of the dark elements. This True Knot cult, it's ultimately a group that is more like vampires than anything. They're sort of immortal beings. It's not like they have the same repulsions that vampires do, but it's like they feed on particular children with this gift to give them immortality. And it sort of reminded me of Lost Boys in a lot of ways, these sort of characters. All the acting's really solid here. Ewan McGregor does a solid job playing Danny Torrance as an adult. I really liked that. I think he had some good moments to it. He's a solid actor. And he did really well with what he had. And he especially shines at the end of the film, in the third act, which is really brilliant to watch. And there's a variety of other actors that pop up, but the real show stealers for me is Rebecca Ferguson and newcomer Kyla Curran. I think both these characters and actresses do a fantastic job. Rebecca Ferguson's a really talented actress. You could tell she's really having fun here. She's making the character her own, and she's breathing life into this character from the page into the film. And she has some really great moments. She's a very powerful character, and she wears this particular hat, and she's known as Rose the Hat, which I really like. And she's sort of the leader of this True Knot group, and she's sort of terrifying in many ways and much more capable than people think she is. And she does a really fantastic job here and really shines in this movie. And I think Kyla Curran does a really solid job here as a newcomer. She's fantastic as Abra. She's the character I'm really invested in most, and I want to follow on the journey, and I really like what they do with her. And the actress is fantastic and has some really great moments, and her character is much more powerful than she seems, and she's much more powerful than anybody else who has a Shining. I really like that. There's a lot to like about this film. It's a very entertaining movie, some really great scare moments in it. The horror's pretty full on in moments, and I think Mike Flanagan can really do that. He brings something unique to the way he does horror. That's not jump scares. Yes, there are some jump scares in the film, but it's all about the presence and the feelings, the screams. It's the things that these particular characters go through that are really effective, and that sort of make you feel uncomfortable and scared for them, and I really like that. My favourite scenes are the start and the end. I really love the start because we get to see Danny after the events of The Shining. It's only a few months later or whatever the time period is. Hasn't spoken since the events. And he's ultimately haunted by these other particular creatures and ghosts and stuff that want to hurt him. And with the help of Dick Hallorann, Dan is ultimately able to use ways to trap these demons and these ghosts that harass him. And I really liked that. I thought that was a refreshing take on things. The start I loved. They used a similar music. They had some, from the first film, they had some great shots of the carpet as sort of the background. I really liked that. I thought that was kind of an interesting take on that particular scenes and a way for us to be thrown back into it. We also meet the True Knot characters and who they are and what they do, and I really love that. I love when we first meet Rebecca Ferguson's character, Rose the Hat. She's sort of singing with flowers near a lake, and I really love that sequence was really great as well. I really love the end of it, the way that went back to the hotel and it's still standing. It's been closed for all these years. We get to relive particular scenes from the original film in a different way. I think most of the scenes with Rebecca Ferguson as Rose are really good. She's a really interesting character and we get to see what she's capable of. Abra's an interesting character as well, and I like all the scenes with her where we get to learn more about her and where we get to see how strong she is. And there is aspects of, we get to see Dan Torrance and where he is, and he ultimately ends up at this sort of nursing home type thing as an orderly. And this is where you start to learn why the story is called Dr. Sleep. We really get to see why it's called that. And I really like those elements too. And this was something they sort of touched on that they could have expanded on a little bit more, because I found this part of the film quite interesting. There are things I didn't quite enjoy as much that I thought could have been handled better. And these sort of things are more to do with characters. Like when we first meet adult Danny, played by Ewan McGregor, I just don't like what they did with the character to begin with. But I just felt like they needed to shift focus from him to Abra. I think Abra should have been the main focus, and I know that it's probably how the film's probably how the book goes, but if we focus completely on Abra to begin with, and then had him sort of like the Dick Hallorann character, that would have been more interesting to me. Having these two shift focuses between Dan and Abra. And I just think Abra was a more interesting character. Some of the visual effects were a bit iffy, especially when these sort of, the True Knot characters, you know, when they sort of pass on, so to speak, they sort of have these flashing of them changing, and I just didn't quite like that at all. I didn't think that looked really good. But besides those, I think it was a solid film. I even really love the music. I love how they had the Shining music to begin with. We get to see them driving up to the hotel like we did in The Shining, and I really like that as well. And whenever tense moments happen for characters and circumstances arise that were quite shocking, there was this sound effect of a heartbeat in the background, which really sucked you in, which really affected you. It felt like it was your heartbeat you were hearing at these shocking things that were happening, and it was your reaction to it. And I thought this was a really great stroke of genius to put this sort of sound effect in, and it worked really well. Final thoughts. Look, like I said, I think Mike Flanagan is one of these great horror directors. We're just trying to do something different and breathing fresh air into a stale genre, making these really interesting, unique films with a low budget and still being able to be creative in that sort of restriction of the budget that I have to work with. And I think that's where he sort of shines. I really like what he does as a filmmaker, and I think he's really fantastic, and he should do more of these Stephen King things because I think he has a real knack for them. I think what made this work for a sequel to a film that came out so long ago was to expand on the ideas that were created in The Shining and showing what these kids with The Shining and how they're able to do what they do, and to show that there are dark people out there trying to take it from them. I thought this was really great. There is a lot of things unanswered, a lot of questions I still have, and I would love to know more. I might even be interested in reading the book and seeing how it pans out, but there's just some stuff in it I wanted to know a little bit more about. Anyway, I'm going to give Dr. Sleep 4 out of 5. I thought it was a good experience. I enjoyed myself with this film. Anyway, that's all from me today. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please subscribe down the bottom. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Otherwise, until next time, enjoy the movies.